Welcome to Block 39 of our Celebrating the States Block of the Month. This is our version of the Washington Star Block. For this block, you will need 3 fabrics, a light, a medium, and a dark. For the light, I have a 4 1/4 inch strip, a 3 1/2 inch strip, and a 2 inch strip. From these strips, you need to cut 4 rectangles that are 2 inches by 6 1/2 inches, 4 rectangles that are 2 inches by 5 inches, 4 squares that are 3 1/2 inches by 3 1/2 inches, and 3 squares that are 4 1/4 inches by 4 1/4 inches. If this is the first Celebrating the States block you're seeing, please check the description below for a link to all of the blocks in this series. Bisect each of the 4 1/4 inch squares 2 times corner to corner to get 12 triangles. From a 2 inch strip of the medium fabric, cut 8 squares that are 2 inches by 2 inches. From a 4 1/4 inch strip of a dark fabric, cut 4 squares that are 4 1/4 inches by 4 1/4 inches. Bisect each of these squares twice, corner to corner, to get 12 triangles. Also from the dark, you need to cut 4 squares that are 2 inches by 2 inches. Now that you're done cutting, it's time to sew. Please use 1/4 inch seam allowances unless directed otherwise. With right sides together, sew light triangles to dark triangles on the short side. Send the flat side through first to keep the points from getting pulled down into the bobbin area. We are not making half square triangle blocks, we're making larger triangles from these smaller triangle units. Make sure you send all of the units through this machine exactly the same way. Press towards the darker fabric. Sew these triangle units together, nesting the center seams. Start and finish the seams slowly to prevent the corners from bunching up and getting stuck underneath the needle. When you sew these together, they will make a 1/4 square triangle block, or I call it an X block. You can press these to one side, or if you prefer, you can press them open. These blocks should measure 3 1/2 inches by 3 1/2 inches. Trim is necessary to get the proper size. I did have to trim mine a little bit. I didn't take much off any of the sides, but I got them trimmed so that they would be perfect. Trimming also gets rid of all those little triangle points that hang off the edge of the block. Put the dark 2 inch squares on the ends of the 2 inch by 5 inch light rectangles. We're going to sew a line corner to corner, so you can either draw a line to sew on the wrong side of the dark fabric, or you can use diagonal seam tape to follow and sew corner to corner. We're doing 2 blocks each, mirror imaging each other, so 2 of the seams will go one direction and the other 2 seams will go the other direction. Once you're done, you want to trim the seam to a 1/4 inch seam allowance and press towards the dark fabric. Sew these units to each other to form a triangle in the center. You'll want to press these from the wrong side so that you can press the seam open. Once pressed, these will measure 2 inches by 9.5 inches. Next, we're going to put the 2-inch medium squares on both ends of the 2-inch by 6-inch light rectangles. On each of those rectangles, pin one of the squares in place so that we can sew the other one first. Sew corner to corner from the center to the corner on each of these ends. The sewing lines should mirror each other. You're making 4 of these units. Check that you have sewn the lines in the correct direction and then trim the seams to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press towards the medium fabric. Sew 2 of the units together to make one long rectangle. You're going to make 2 of these units. Once pressed, they will measure 2 inches by 12.5 inches. Press these units from the wrong side so that you can press the seam open. Now we're going to use the 3.5 inch light squares with the X blocks to make a large 9-patch unit. The X blocks should begin each of the corners and in the center. You will have 3 rows, 2 rows on the outsides that are the same, and then the center row. Each of these rows should measure 3.5 inches by 9.5 inches once finished. Press towards the light squares. Next, you're going to sew all of the rows together to make the large 9 patch in the center, and you're going to add the 2-inch rectangles on the opposite sides of the large 9 patch. Once it's sewn together and pressed, you will have a large center area that measures 9.5 inches by 12.5 inches. Press towards the center row and the outer rows. Just 2 more seams and our Washington block will be finished. Sew the last 2 rectangles in place so that the medium fabric is in each of the corners. Press away from the center of the block. Once pressed, your block will measure 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches. We hope you're enjoying our Celebrating the States Block the Month. Please remember to hit the like button, leave a comment for us, share with your quilting friends, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and happy quilting!